This is our very first Client Insights virtual event series kickoff. We are going to be talking on this virtual event series about the TE or Thought Exchange use cases, where we're highlighting some of our best leaders, how they're using Thought Exchange. One of the questions we always get from our clients and our partners is, I want to continue using this and I want to know more about all of the different ways that my fellow colleagues, my other leaders, my peers are using the platform to help build trust, to crowdsource innovation in their own organizations. And so we've created this virtual event series so that we can highlight those leaders who are using the platform in really innovative ways. I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Steve Bigelow as soon as we get started. Today we're going to be talking about using Thought Exchange to create unity with your school board. Before we get started on that though, I want to invite you to join the conversation outside of this virtual event series, whether you're on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Instagram, whatever social media platform you prefer. We'd love for you to use these hashtags if you want to join the conversation outside of this. Use hashtag TEVE for TE virtual events, or use hashtag TE use cases. We're talking about all of these wonderful ways to use the platform. Make sure you're using these hashtags for these conversations outside of the virtual event. Okay, so now I want to introduce you to Dr. Steve Bigelow. He was named Superintendent of Bay City Public Schools in July 2017 and moved his 2 children and wife from the Detroit area to Bay City in August. So pretty new there still, Steve. He holds a Doctor of Philosophy and Education Specialist degrees from Oakland University, a Master of Public Administration from the University of Michigan Dearborn, and a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Michigan Ann Arbor. Dr. Bigelow's prior positions include Superintendent of KPAC Community Schools, Principal of Casino High School in Warren, Principal of Carlton Middle School in Sterling Heights, Assistant Principal of Beer Middle School in Warren, and as a teacher in South Leon Community Schools and Warren Consolidated Schools. So it sounds like you have a really robust background, Steve, and we're so excited to have you featured on today's virtual event. Thank you for coming. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be part of this.
Lovely. So really quickly, guys, our agenda for today, we're going to discuss the reasons Dr. Bigelow used Thought Exchange to identify big goals within his district, how those goals, of course, were aligned to the strategic plan for the district, and how he closed the loop and shared the goals with the district's 1,000-person staff to set the tone for the coming school year. So I think we're ready to dive right in, and we've gotten to know you a little bit, Steve, professionally, but we like to get to know you a little bit personally before we jump in. So we do this little thing on our virtual events called our 5-star questions for our 5-star leaders. I ask you a series of questions in quick succession, and you just pick which one most aligns with you. Are you ready?
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Okay. Road trips or air travel?
Road trips.
That was easy. No second guessing that one. Okay.
No, I got it. I got this.
Okay. In-person meeting or virtual meetings?
In-person meetings.
Love it. Love it. Salty snacks or sweet tooth?
Definitely salty snacks.
Right. And then Twitter or Instagram?
Twitter.
Really? Are you really active on Twitter?
I'm very active on Twitter. Yeah, I love Twitter.
Okay, yeah. Good. I think a lot of educational leaders are, and so I'm not surprised to hear that that's your choice. So thanks so much. We've gotten to know you personally now and professionally. So let's just dive into this use case.
I'm curious, is there a profile that gets built from these questions now, from the answers?
No, but you know what? I should get my growth team on that.
There you go.
No, I'm making a note. Me and Amelia, we're on it, Steve.
All right.
Okay, talk to me about Bay City Public Schools, who you guys are as a district, and talk to me a little bit about the challenges that you are facing in creating some unity with the school board.
Yeah, so Bay City Public Schools is a fairly large district that covers a large geographical area. So we actually cover 260 square miles. And within the district itself, we cover the city of Bay City and then several townships that surround us. And so we have everything from areas of high poverty to the traditional affluent suburban schools that you see as well. So we really have a cross section of everything. And then within the community as well, there's actually sections of the city that are divided off where there's a river that goes right through the middle of town, and people on the west side and of the river do not care for the people on the east side of the river. And there's still rivalries that exist between the schools on both sides of the river, which are part of Bay City Public Schools. And so there's a lot of history here. And because of that, a lot of these traditions are entrenched. And so while that's wonderful, as I'm trying to move the district forward, it's important that I can move people out of some of these entrenched beliefs that maybe don't apply anymore.
Yeah, I think that a lot of districts that span a huge footprint, like you're describing, you're right. There's urban and rural that's encompassed in that. There's a huge disparity of wealth. I'm sure that there are really segregated populations, and for better or worse. And so it's really the job of a superintendent to really create that unity. And so I'm sure you saw a lot of those deep-rooted beliefs in your school board as well. Is that something that you were challenged with?
Absolutely. So I have 7 board members, and the 7 board members represent various areas of the community. And so when you have community that is very much, this is my school and we don't agree with that other school, well, now they're all on the same team. And I need them not to be thinking school by school, but thinking from that broad 30,000 foot view of what's in the best interest of the district and everybody. And so for me, the real challenge is how can I push these board members who maybe got on because they didn't like something that was happening at a particular school, or they had their own agenda. How do I move beyond that? But the other component too is that with our board members, we have some amazing thoughts that come from them, but many of them are quiet and won't say anything during a board meeting itself, or because of some of the alliances that happen outside of my control, when they're meeting on the street or whatever. I don't necessarily know what's happening with that either. And so we had the dynamic where it tended to be the loudest voice on the board that was getting the attention, but that doesn't mean that that's the voice that makes sense for our district. Mm-hmm. So Thoughtexchange is a great way for me to get some of those thoughts from the more quiet people. And I thought, well, I'm going to try this during our summer retreat. I wasn't sure how it would go. And I'll let you know, my board of ed, many of them are 65 and older as well. So that's kind of a unique dynamic. Several of them don't have kids in our school system anymore. And so one of my concerns is, well, how's this technology component going to go? And we have, across the scale. So in this case, because I didn't want anything to go wrong, I ended up using Chromebooks with all of them and actually logged them all into the Thoughtexchange site ahead of time so that they didn't have to do a thing. All they had to do is type in the questions. Because of this dynamic that happens with our school board, we can go on in this endless loop of conversation where we're not getting anywhere. The loudest voice is creating the attention. The other board members aren't saying anything, but they're frustrated because they don't agree. And then we just end up treading water. And so I was very happy with this retreat that we did. We actually came out in a relatively quick period of time with 4 concrete parts that we were going to move forward on behalf of our district in support of the strategic plan. So it really was a miracle worker for me.
I love hearing that it was a miracle worker. I think you're right. Meetings are biased towards the extroverts. And so that doesn't help. I think having an older board, it can always create a challenge when introducing some technology. And those political undercurrents that you're describing that happen kind of outside of your purview, I think all of those things contributed to the challenges that you were facing. But it sounds like you were able to combat each of those through the Thoughtexchange. So I'm so glad to hear that. I'm curious to know, well, actually, one of the things I want to ask you about, Steve, you used the question, what are your top priorities for Bay City Public Schools? Can you talk to me a little bit about why you decided that particular question?
Yeah, when I sat down to talk about the retreat with our board president, I was trying to get a sense of where we were going with the retreat, because quite honestly, we were doing a retreat to do a retreat because we've always done retreats, but I'm not sure how valuable those were. Mm-hmm. So we had the conversation of, well, what is the purpose of the retreat? So we have a strategic plan that we put in right when I came into the district, a 5-year plan. I said, well, we need to tie into that plan, see if there's any retooling that we need to do with it. But beyond that, sticking with our plan, what is it we actually want to accomplish? What is it that the board would like to see of our district? And so it became with, we got that very simple question of what are your top priorities? I wasn't sure what number we were going to come up with. I don't know how I ended on 4, but as I went through and we talked about it as a group, it seemed like there were 4 that really encompassed all of their ideas from those thoughts that were going, and they tie nicely into our strategic plan. So that's really how it happened. I was surprised, pleasantly surprised by how their responses all went into very specific themes too. Curriculum, facilities, finance, and being a district that kids want to go to.
I love that. So I'm curious to know that you did this, like you said, running a thought exchange is quick, right? It only takes you maybe 8-10 minutes to do. I'm curious, could you feel the kind of tension kind of dissipate, and then this unity? Could you feel the difference once you started running the exchange?
Yeah, I was really nervous when I started, and I've got kind of the cantankerous guy that will complain about anything with technology, and of course something wasn't working on his. We got it resolved very quickly, so that was the first hurdle. So that was good, and they actually liked it. But I have a board member who is very insightful and very verbose as well, and this was actually helpful because I was able to get the thoughts down in a more concrete manner rather than talking about it for an hour. We were able to get concise thoughts down. And then the fact that the board could look at all those ideas that come through and rank them, I mean, that's really the power of the whole thing. So and nobody felt like they were not being heard in the process.
That's incredible. I'm so glad to hear that. I'm sure that those that are introverted on your board so appreciated this effort, and I'm sure that it increased the trust capital with the board and you. So I love that. So you were able then to collectively with them, the action you were able to take was to create those 4 focuses, those 4 big goals, and align them to your strategic plan and use that exercise there. I'm curious though, you didn't stop there though, right, Steve?
No.
You took this even further in closing the loop. So talk to me a little bit about what you did and how you were able to do that.
So as a superintendent, I work for the Board of Ed. So this was huge for me because now I had what the board wanted to see, and I had it in a concrete way where I could present that to our entire district. So we do the big, welcome back, where everybody who works for the district comes on into one of our auditoriums. And I actually kicked it off by talking about the summer retreat and what it is that we accomplished. And I actually took a screenshot from the Thoughtexchange report of our top 4 ideas and how they were starred, the whole thing. And I put it up, projected it onto the screen when I was talking to the group of 1,000 employees and talked about how we got to that and how it ties into our strategic plan. And it was very, very well received, an incredibly positive start. And it was helpful for me as superintendent because all the employees understand that the board and I are together on a team, working together. But more importantly than that, they saw that we actually had a plan and we just weren't up there, faking it and doing the welcome back, we're glad to see you type of thing. We actually have some objectives in mind.
Yeah, no, there's so much robust substance and showing that to them too. I think as a former teacher, it's easy to have this perception that the district leadership is up in this kind of ivory tower doing whatever they want, and we don't really have a lot of insight into that. And so I think taking the screenshot and showing the staff, the teachers, all of the people that are kind of on the ground, everything that happened at the board retreat, that it wasn't just this ethereal thing that they went and did and we don't have any insight into it. I'm sure that helped create such trust capital too with those teachers and staff, because they were able to say, yeah, that not only are they aligned, but they're letting us have some insight into what they accomplished at that board retreat.
It was huge. And then from those 4 components, I was actually able to tell the staff what we're going to do to reach those 4 components during the year. So essentially at this welcome back meeting, they now had an entire year mapped out. So when they see these initiatives roll through, they understand why it is and how we came to that decision.
That's great. So you've created the unity with the board and then also recruited the rest of the staff on the same team and at the same time. That's wonderful. Okay, so I'd love to know, a lot of our partners, they always talk about the funding source, how they purchase Thoughtexchange. A lot of our partners use Title I funds, or they reallocate other engagement or survey funds. I'm curious to know, what was the funding source that you guys used at Bay City Public Schools?
Yeah, so within our district, we have several schools that are Title I, but in this course, I actually use at-risk funding. So at-risk is similar to Title funding. However, I have a little bit more flexibility in how I can use it. And one of the caveats with that risk funding, and this is a new initiative, but there has to be a component that is devoted to community engagement and involvement. Well, I thought, well, this is perfect for Thoughtexchange, because actually I'm going to be using Thoughtexchange later this year. We're going for a $30 million bond, and I'm going to use Thoughtexchange to go out to the diverse community and figure out exactly what is it that they would like to see from this bond. And I'm looking forward to using Thoughtexchange in the process for the same reason it worked with the board. People can track the thoughts and how they're going and organize them that way, instead of, again, the loudest voice in the room getting a new gym put on a building, for example. We'll see what the real needs are this way. And I can show it to the community. So with the board, I actually, after we were done with the Thoughtexchange, I sent the report to them. So they were able to see everything that happened. And I'm not sure how that'll work with our entire community, but I think I'll probably highlight some of the thoughts that go through. So when it's time for that bond election, I'm able to show them, hey, look, this is what you asked for. This is what we're moving for.
Yeah, that's lovely. I so appreciate that insight. So I know you've got the bond exchange on the docket. Do you have any other exchanges that you're planning for the rest of the school year?
Yes. So I've done a lot of restructuring in central office. So we're changing how we do some of our staff meetings, which is good. Staff meetings meaning how I'm meeting with our administrative staff. But I'm actually going to do a thought exchange with them. I already did one thought exchange with them. I'm doing another one next week. The thought exchange I did when we met at the beginning of the year was I actually stole it from Thoughtexchange. But what do you look like at your worst? And we're actually doing some professional development with using Hogan assessments and 360 surveys to take a look at who we are as leaders and what are our derailers. So that fit in nicely there. I was able to develop a profile. But moving forward, I have the nuts and bolts staff meeting next week. These are the boring meetings where you're just talking about what kind of paperwork forms need to go across. And I always ask them, through a Google Doc, what are some things you want to talk about? What are some good agenda items? And a few people will send stuff in. But again, I think most everybody they don't want to be at a meeting. I don't blame them. These are things we have to get through. So I'm going to use a thought exchange at the very beginning of this meeting. They already have their agenda, but I know there's people they're just too shy to say anything. I'm going to say, okay, now's your chance. Anonymously, we're going to do a thought exchange. If there's any item that you would like to talk about that's not on this agenda, please let me know what that is. And then I'll take the top choices that they have there and we'll address those issues. So the people who are never speaking up, I'm hoping this will engage them.
I love that. I think that that's great too, because as opposed to that Google form where you're kind of asking them, what else am I missing? They don't get to engage with each other. So even if somebody says one thing on a Google form and you see it and you go, oh, that seems compelling, but you have no idea to know if the rest of the group also wants to hear about that. And so I think doing it through the thought exchange is the perfect idea. I love that. So you'll have to keep us posted on the success of that and whether or not you're able to hear from everyone.
Okay.
Okay, good. So you've talked a lot about how you were able to create unity with this kind of, like I said, the political undercurrents, kind of people from all over the board, from all over different parts of your district, how you were able to close the loop and really recruit and bring the teachers on board once you were able to identify the big goals and align them with the strategic plan. One of the things I want to do now, Steve, is invite the attendees to ask you some questions with our own thought exchange. So.
Okay.
Yeah, so go ahead. If you are watching right now, Amelia just posted the link to the exchange in the chat box. I'm going to share my screen and take out your mobile device if this is easier. And let's get this going. Okay, and I'm going to, there's your QR code, guys. All you've got to do is get your mobile device out, take your camera, zoom in on the QR code, something will pop down, click on it, it'll take you right into the exchange. Remember, you don't have to sign up, you can just agree to the privacy terms and then you're in there and ready to go. Or if it's easier, you can always go to your web browser and put in thoughtexchange.com/join and then enter the 9-digit code that you see on the screen. The question we're asking today is, what thoughts or questions do you have for Steve? We've covered a ton. If you are interested in doing this in your own district or your own organization, this is the perfect opportunity to pick Steve's brain. So once you get into the exchange, share your thoughts or questions for him, share one or two, and then of course make sure you're rating once you get to the star step. Rate all of the thoughts if you can. There's probably a lot in there, so we want to hear the priorities from you. And then once you've had a few minutes to do that, we'll dive into the top thoughts report with Steve. So I need to be quiet so you can participate. So we're going to sit here and let you do that. And I'm going to participate myself. So we'll see you in just a few minutes. Okay. While everybody's finishing up with their starring, I'm just going to invite you to take a look at the thought graph so we can see how everybody is engaging with each other. Of course, each person you see here, each little purple person is somebody inside the exchange participating. Each blue dialog box, of course, is the thought that has been shared, and each orange line represents the rating from that person to that thought. You see the priorities of the group changing in real time based on the ratings that are happening. So keep going, get in there. I'm going to give you just one more minute and then we're going to dive in. Steve, there's some great thoughts and questions in here that people want to hear from you about. So I can't wait for us to get started on that.
All right, great.
Okay, Steve, are you ready? Now that we've invited all of the attendees to participate in this conversation, it's going to make it even more robust and of course targeted to what they really want to hear. Do you have anyone using it on a building level? Principals, teachers in class? Talk to me about the kind of depth of implementation that you guys have in the district.
So I actually plan on doing that in the future. Right now, I am the only user of the platform in the district, and I'm trying to become more comfortable with using it and make sure that our principals become comfortable by experiencing it with me as we go through it this year. I've actually seen some of the beta demo versions where it can be used in the classroom with teachers as well. I think that's outstanding, but right now it's only me using it.
Yeah, that's good. I think you're right. I think the scaffolded approach for you guys is a good idea. Using it with the board, next step, using it with campus leaders once they get comfortable participating, and then maybe giving them the opportunity to use it. And then, of course, using that same model with your teachers. Sounds like a good plan. Have you done any thought exchanges with parents in the district? I know you're planning on doing the one with the bond.
Right.
Have you done anything just yet?
I have not. The bond is going to be probably our first attempt at that, which isn't going to be too long from now. I actually thought about using it with parents in the district. As I do my own 360 survey, I asked the community to provide me with some feedback. I just haven't thought through what that would actually look like through a thought exchange.
Yeah, I think a good idea. And some of our districts that do it include it with a survey as kind of a way to supplement their survey practices. Usually just include the link to the exchange at the bottom of the kind of quantifiable survey. And so then at the very end, instead of having a traditional text box that says, give us your thoughts.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, so you could just do it that way, Steve, and that will be easy.
Okay.
Okay, good. Will your administrators participate in similar thought exchanges with regards to the strategic plan? I think this is a great idea. You've told them about the results of it. Will you have them also participate in a similar exercise?
I will now. That's a great idea. So I hadn't even thought about that. I love it.
Okay, good. Well, this is why thought exchange is so great, because things that you aren't thinking of, right? We're all helping each other continue to grow.
That's right.
Well, when you do that, then Steve, you'll have to report back to us, because I think inquiring minds will want to know how it landed with them and if it was as equally successful.
Okay.
Has the atmosphere of your board meetings changed as a result of the success in the retreat and the exchange?
So the atmosphere at the board meetings has not changed because we have that very traditional board meeting structure, and there's the audience there as well. So that's actually the next step. Now, I have great communication with the board outside of the board meetings, but obviously during a meeting, we have to be very careful about what's said and how it's said. Mm-hmm. And I thought about actually using Thought Exchange during a board meeting itself. There's really no way I can do it during our traditional meetings, because then it would appear that we're hiding conversation from the audience. So I want to be careful with that. But we have committee of the whole meetings, which are regular board meetings, but that's where we really get through the planning stage and look at things. So I thought I do see using Thought Exchange at the committee of the whole meetings. I just haven't gotten there yet.
Okay, well, again, keep us posted. And I think now that the board has already participated in it and they're more comfortable with the technology, it might be a perfect next step.
Yeah.
Okay. Were you able to include students in the exchange and explicitly pull out their feedback in the strategic plan process? Would love to hear your thoughts.
When we did our strategic plan, we did include students, but that was before we had Thoughtexchange. So actually, again, as I think about looking at this bond moving forward, one of the things that we can definitely do is use it to ask the students what it is that they would like to see as well. And I'm curious to see the responses that come from it.
Yeah, I love that. It's so funny because even in education, of course, our biggest focus is on students, but I think a lot of times the student voice gets lost
It
when we do
does.
large projects. And so I think one way to do, as you go out to the community for this bond uh, engagement with the exchange, it may be a good idea if you did the student one first,
Yeah.
ask them what they thought, and then you were able to include that in the introduction for the parents and the community. Say, hey, we asked the students, this is what they thought. Now tell us what you think. I think that may calibrate them to think about it a little differently, being able to hear the voice of the students before they input their thoughts and ideas.
That is a great idea. Absolutely.
Good, good. Oh, I'm super excited about that. I'm sure the students talk about building trust capital. Their superintendent comes and says, we're going to spend a lot of money. What would you do with it? And I think, gosh, they would be so excited
I love it.
to let you know. What was the biggest hurdle or barrier you ran into as you began implementing this? I think you've talked about this. You're the only one who's using this right now. And I think some of that is navigating this implementation process, making sure you're comfortable with it to avoid any challenges or hurdles. Is that part of your idea?
Without a doubt. I want to make sure that I'm using it properly. My biggest hurdle implementing it, quite honestly, was I had no idea how the board was going to receive it. I was scared to death because they are, as a whole, kind of anti-technology, which is a strange thing to say, but it's true. So, and actually, they really enjoyed the process and are still remarking about what a great retreat that was. So it obviously left a lasting impression on them.
Lovely. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I think having so much about the implementation process is having that executive sponsorship. I think that really leads the success in implementation. And so having you be really comfortable, having you be the champion of it in the district, and I think having you be the expert on it, I think will help as you start to move it further down into the district. So we talked about teachers. Some teachers do. We have a lot of districts that do that, and we'll certainly be highlighting those use cases on this virtual event series, so stay tuned for that. Do you think the board members are now more engaged with the strategic plan since doing this?
Absolutely. So we have some board members, two of them who came on board after that strategic plan was developed. So this process actually was an orientation for them as well, where they got to see, oh, I understand the plan now, and this is how it works. And the plan is dynamic. Yes, we have our concrete things that will not change, but it's constantly evolving as we evolve as an organization.
That's great. I'm so glad to hear that. Do you think Thoughtexchange can help build staff morale within a district?
I absolutely do. We talked about going out to the staff and allowing them to have an opportunity through the Thoughtexchange. What are some of your wants and needs as a staff in the district? And that way they can see that they are not being ignored in this process, especially when it really is transparent. You're seeing what people's ideas are, and then that your idea is in there too. I've gone through numerous thought exchanges where I'm like, oh, my idea wasn't so highly rated, but no, okay, I get it, and you're able, well, that really was a good idea at the top. So that's really nice. People see that they're not just being forgotten. That's where I see this being a benefit as opposed to our traditional surveys that we do. That's why I like that idea that you had about that open-ended text box, because at least everybody knows that their thoughts truly are being looked at and thought about, as opposed to, on a traditional survey, they say something or they respond, but they have no idea if it's ever even being looked at. So this allows that to take place.
Yeah, it goes off into the survey abyss.
Yep.
To never to be heard or seen again.
That's right.
Okay, good. How do you plan on getting exchanges out into the community? I think this is a question we get a lot, is like distribution methods. And I think you did a really good, innovative job in getting the Chromebooks and getting the boards set up and ready. And that was a really effective distribution method for that small group setting. What are you thinking about for this community?
So I'm going to have several face-to-face meetings within the community. I'll be at every community meeting you can think of, talking about the bond. So I'll use that as an opportunity to get the survey out. I'll put it out an attachment for it on Facebook, on Twitter. We'll have a link on our district webpage. I mean, it's going to be everywhere, so you basically can't escape it. That's the best way. We're just going to saturate.
That's great. I love it. You can't escape it. We also, of course, have the SMS option in distribution. And I know a lot of people, if it comes on their phone, then they're hooked in and they'll
Yes.
do it. So you can always send them a text message too.
Yep, and we will do that as well.
Yeah, really seriously, no escaping the exchange. How has Thoughtexchange changed your thinking in the way of seeking input from stakeholders?
The whole Thoughtexchange process itself has really changed the way I think about things. When I first came across it, I thought, oh, this is something I can do with any other survey platform. And then as I got into it and I participated in it myself, I saw how different it is. So I think that it is really having a formative discussion with stakeholders of what it is, where we're building upon one another's ideas. So it's not just give me your opinion, but we're actually having a thoughtful conversation. I mean, that's really what it is. And it's an ability to have a conversation with huge numbers of people at once.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's a two-way thing. So you're right. It really, I think, takes the way that you have considered community engagement and turns it on its ear, and you go, oh, this is a whole new way of doing it in a way that makes everyone feel heard, which I'm so glad you experienced too. So how long do you give your exchange? So with that board retreat, how long did you do that one for?
Yeah, so again, I had 7 board members, and I don't know what the actual amount of time was. I would guess 20 minutes might be right, but that could be a little long. It took them a while to get logged in. Once they were logged in, there was just a loud, quiet period, which was actually kind of nice. But I would go around and prompt some, or if they had a question, hey, how much, common question, how much should I write in here? I said, well, get your entire thought out, and they would. So 20 minutes maybe, that's about right.
Yeah, and to think about how you were able to create alignment where there was none before in just a matter of 15 to 20 minutes. Well,
and just, I forgot this part, but leading into the Thoughtexchange itself, I had them view a video. It's Admiral William McRaven who does, it's a whole thing about making your bed. He was a Navy SEAL, and it talks about the whole important piece was making really difficult decisions and how you have to stick to those decisions. So that was the prompt that I gave the board, and as we're going to have some difficult decisions going forward, so how are they going to use this? So I feel like that little intro helped them as they went into the Thoughtexchange too, because I think they were willing to put some things down, even more so than what they typically would. I love that. I appreciate that you, because that introduction to the Thoughtexchange is so vitally important. It helps them calibrate how willing they are to share, especially when it's a new platform that they're not super comfortable with. So inviting them into this safe space by talking about, like, we're going to make some difficult decisions together, and that's okay, I think probably gave you more robust thoughts and questions and priorities than you may have gotten otherwise. Yeah, it also gave me an opportunity to make sure that their Chromebooks are working properly too. So. Yes, of course. All the philosophical part and the technical part all goes hand in hand. I love it. Okay, other than the BOE exchange, what has been your most successful exchange? What made it great? You talked about that leadership one. How are you at your worst as a leader? Was that one equally as successful, more successful? What made it good for you? That one it was just very different. I don't know how to put it on the success scale. It was great because it's leading in the professional development that we've been working on. When you're at your worst, what happens when you're under stress? Why do you do those things? So we did get into that conversation. It was very successful, but it kind of stopped at that point because we haven't picked up the conversation. That's going to happen through some of the coaching that we're receiving next year. So really my most successful was with the board because we're still talking about it on a daily basis. I think that I'm so glad you brought that up, Steve, because I think so much of the success of an exchange is not necessarily the exchange in and of itself. The success of the exchange is many times defined by the actions that you take
from it. The creation of the goals, the setting of the priorities, the alignment to the strategic plan, the closing the loop with the staff, all of those action items that you were able to move forward on as a result of the exchange really, I think, helped define the success of that Board of Education exchange. And that this other exchange that you did on leadership, you're still waiting to close that loop and to move that forward. And that really will define the success of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, and leading into the thought exchange I'm going to do this week, I'll be curious how that goes. I mean, just eliciting thoughts from them on what do you want to see on your agenda. It'll be good. Maybe we'll be able to tie in the last thought exchange to it as well.
That's great. Have you heard the priorities from the, let me make sure. Have you heard the priorities from the board? What ways did you use thought exchange for larger stakeholder feedback? We're still waiting to do that. So we're going to scooch past that one because I want to try to make sure we get everything in the last 5 minutes. I would be interested in seeing the specific questions that were asked for the board around target setting. Well, we know the question that was asked in the exchange. What are your top priorities for Bay City Public Schools?
Yeah, so our strategic plan is really where those targets came from, and we went into the strategic plan. The board knows it inside and out, but we have it broken down by there's 6 big goals. One is academics, and then we have learning environment and culture, personnel and leadership, community engagement, communications, and then district operations. So those are those big headings that we were looking at. And when we were done, our priorities, we had develop a curriculum for K-12 that is used to move the district forward. Those were their words, but that's kind of what they landed on. Of course, that's why we're here. That was a 3.8. I remember that score. The next one was to develop a 5-year facility plan for the district. Now that's huge for us, especially since we're moving into this bond project. I mean, that's really what it's about, which is where I'm really working with the board right now, because it's controversial anytime you're looking at making any changes of enrollment areas or what buildings are staying open, that sort of thing. So that's big. And they actually guaranteed me that they would have a 5-year strategic plan for facilities done by this October. So that's coming up. I actually have a committee working on that. The other one is how do we differentiate our district from our neighboring districts? We're a school of choice area, so obviously we want to be competitive with our neighbors. And then the 4th big one that came out was making sure that we are fiscally sound, which is always the case. So I mean, those are the 4 areas. But as we talk about going into the bond, and as we talk about that 5-year facility plan, I mean, it was important to get that information out to the overall staff as well.
That's great. Thanks for sharing those things.
Yeah.
What are you using in the reporting feature other than just sharing it? What kind of analysis are you doing with it? I know there's a number of different, of course, you can see this here on our Discover dashboard. What do you feel like was your go-to in regards to reporting it out?
Actually, the theme part was really helpful for me because it was broken down nicely by curriculum, facilities. So we actually had themes that automatically popped up there. I was able to go in and change some of the labels, but
good.
That was helpful. The other thing, I don't know which. Oh, you know what? It's down on the bottom under. If you go down a little bit more on the lab,
the Thought Exchange Labs.
They actually really like seeing the word cloud. And we see those all the time, but actually, I've got it hanging on my door in here.
I love that. It's in your office.
It is. So it reminds me of what were those big things that we talked about. And I think it helped them as well.
That's so great. I'm so glad to hear that. Did you share the word cloud at the big kickoff with the rest of the
That was actually the screensaver when they walked into the meeting. So
lovely. Yeah, everyone loves a good word cloud. So having access to it, that's so good. Okay, let's see. Just a few more before we break. Oh, actually, we're right at the top. We're right here at the end. Let's see. When did you realize, let's just end with the last one here. I know we've skipped a few, but we're running out of time. When did you realize Thought Exchange was a good tool for your district? Did your board approve it easily?
So in this case, I didn't have to have board approval for it. So, but they're happy that we have it. But I knew it was a good tool. I mean, really 2 years ago, I became acquainted with it at a conference, and I've tried it several times. I was intrigued with it. I mean, I knew it was a good tool when I actually participated in the professional development that was using Thoughtexchange, and it really, I saw how it transformed the entire development session. So I thought this is exactly what I need in Bay City Public Schools.
Great. I'm so excited to hear that. You know, Steve, I can't thank you enough for sharing the success story with us. As you can see, there was a ton of thoughts and questions about it, so I'm sure that this was really helpful for all of our attendees. We appreciate you being our kind of trailblazer in this new virtual event series. Do you have anything else you'd like to share before we close for the day?
Well, I would just like to thank everybody for participating because I got some great ideas from them. So I'm excited to get going.
Good. I'm glad. I'm so glad to hear that, because that's really what these virtual events are for, so that we can all continue to learn and grow together to make us the leaders that we want to be. Just a quick note, guys, if you are wanting to share this with anyone, we're going to send out a report and the recording of this virtual event in just a few days. And if you've got another 15 minutes and you've been inspired by anything that you heard here, we've got Eric Tennyson waiting for the last 15 minutes. Amelia has posted the link to that kind of office hours. You can jump on with him and kind of brainstorm some ideas about how you can continue to use Thoughtexchange in your own organization. So thanks so much for joining us today. Happy Friday, everyone. We will see you again next time.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Bye.
Bye-bye.